Last time on Lightlark, we saw more pointless feeling demonstrations and were reminded that Cleo is a badass with an army. Isla demonstrated burning the crap out of her arm, but she's too badass even to flinch. Isla and Celeste continue to have more chemistry than Isla and any of the boys. Our hero invaded the Moonling Library using the master rock climbing and ninja skills that she's totally had this whole time. Through another weird demonstration, we found out that Oro is dying, I guess. Isla was paired up with High King Oro, and he needed her to help him find a different MacGuffin than she and her friend were already looking for. We're just going to keep adding MacGuffins until one of them solves all our problems. Hi, hello. It is a dreary, gross day outside. Perfect for torturing myself with this book. I've taken a couple of days off because this book was making me so mad. I didn't want to go back to it. That's a different reaction than I normally have, at least. This book is making me so incensed on the behalf of young readers. By the way, if you hear noises in the background, my office is kind of close to the laundry room, which, hey, we have a laundry room, which is really exciting. But a washing machine sounds like the apocalypse. So, even though I have the door shut, if you hear, a noise that sounds like the house might be falling down, don't be alarmed, it's just the washing machine. Fun story. I'm gonna do anything to avoid getting to this book, but you guys will be entertained. So, we feed our cats in separate rooms because Nigel has special medicated cat food. He is an older gentleman, he has some issues, he needs special food. And Giorgio would much rather eat his special food than her own food because of course. So she gets fed in the laundry room and he gets fed in the bathroom that's near the laundry room. All's fine and dandy, except for one day I thoughtlessly put a load of laundry in before I feed the cat. And so I shut her in the laundry room and then the washing machine starts to do its thing where it sounds like the end of the world. And I just hear meow, meow, and it's Giorgio. And I open the door and she comes tearing out of the room like, Mother has shut me in with a monster. So yeah, that's the story of how I accidentally traumatized the cat. I thought you would all appreciate it. It has a better plot than this book. But let's go. The next chapter is called Storm, and it looks like it wants to snow outside, so let's go. We are now with Oro, a character who previous to now has had absolutely no personality whatsoever, but for some reason is still annoying to the main character. Let's go, Oro. What do you got for us? Isla wonders if Oro has gotten really used to being out at night because he can't be out in the sunlight anymore because of his curse. What a horrible curse to happen. Is he used to it? 500 years is a long time, which is the beginnings of a thought that could maybe be turned into more, but I know this author won't, where she could realize how much all of these cultures and people have changed over 500 years and how breaking the curses is totally going to do very weird things to their cultures and societies that have since formed around dealing with the curse. Just think about how much our lives have changed just because of the pandemic. And that took a couple of years. We have a whole new constructs in our society and the way we function as a society because of that. Now imagine if we had these curses for 500 years. Going back and getting rid of it would fundamentally change our cultures. Definitely Alex Astor is not ready for that kind of thing. So she's like, where are we going? And I'm like, didn't we just say in the last chapter that you were going into the forest? He needed somebody who was good at the forest. And yeah, you should totally keep hiding your powers because otherwise the forest will detect you. Were we not participating in the previous chapter? Ooh, horses do exist in this universe. She thinks that she looks ready to ride a horse because she's wearing pants. So apparently in this universe, women just wear skirts all the time, which fine, whatever. Unless they're riding horses, which we have not seen any horses. She keeps being worried that Cleo wants to kill her, but Cleo has had every opportunity, so I think you need to stop thinking that you're so special, Isla. I don't know if this is going to be a plot point later, but we went off on a tangent about how the wind here is very different from the wind back home. Apparently the wind back home like has a legitimate actual voice that you can hear, and it sings and it also talks and it tells legends of how the wildlings used to be. And Isla is like, I used to talk to the wind, but it would never talk back. So like, do they worship the wind? Is the wind their god? I don't know. This came the fuck out of nowhere, and I don't know if we're setting up later for like her to be able to talk to the wind and it to do something, or whether the author just like went off on some kind of weird random tangent and nobody bothered to take it out of the book.
Can you paint with all the colors of the wind?
So Oro doesn't take her to the woods right away, as I expected he would, but instead they go to the frozen storm, because the storm that surrounds the island doesn't dissipate, it just freezes, I guess. And the description of it is like clunky even for this author. I don't know, like she was really struggling to describe the storm. I had to read the description a couple of times to know exactly what I was meant to be picturing. There's something about a floating ring of fire that I don't understand. Like, even for her, she's not the worst at describing things. She just kind of is very brief when she does it. But like, even for her, this was confusing. Finally, oh man, this mystery solved. She gets him to admit that he saved her when she fell from her fucking balcony the first day. And she's still mad. She's still mad that when he saved her life, that he left her instead of like staying to make sure that she was okay. Like, he saved you and put you back on your balcony. What do you want? He's like, yeah, also I healed you. You like hit your head when you fell and I healed you. Instead of being like, oh, I guess maybe you're not such a bad person after all. I'm sorry. She's like, if I fall in the water now, I'm gonna take you with me. I love our main character. She's so pleasant to be around. So they're apparently crossing like some kind of stone bridge. Oh, there goes the washing machine. Trust me, if I didn't have that door closed, it would sound like the house was falling down. But anyway, they're crossing these bridges, I guess, in the storm to some like smaller islands. So they come to a giant hole in the little mountain that they have stepped onto. I'm just telling you the facts, I don't know. The fact that Isla doesn't want to fall into this black hole that she can't see the bottom, or rather jump into it, which is what he wants them to do, is categorized as like a fear that she has. Are we trying to give our character flaws? Oh, she's afraid of doing this potentially very stupid thing. That makes her a flawed character. So after a bit of waffling, she jumps into the hole and there's water inside and he immediately pulls her out, so she's fine. So she goes to punch him for reasons I do not understand. Like, he didn't shove you into the hole. He didn't make you come here. You chose this. He catches her hand, of course, but like, why was she gonna hit him? Don't hit people. Do I have to have like a kindergarten class here? We don't hit people, Isla. Apparently there's a whole character arc going on with Oro that he doesn't trust people and he needs to learn to trust. And so like, he was testing to see if she trusted him, and I'm like, oh wow, I'm sure that's gonna be handled well and skillfully.
Get used to disappointment.
I don't understand female protagonists that we see in a lot of these books that we read here on this channel fly into rages at the mildest, like, inconvenience. She could be annoyed with him for making her jump into a black hole full of water, but like, she wants to hit him, she wants to stab him. She's like, gosh, I wish I'd brought a dagger. I have my earrings as little weapons, but they wouldn't do enough damage. Like, what is wrong with you, ma'am? Why are you so violent all of a sudden? This guy, he barely had a personality. You don't know him at all, and you've decided that you are enemies. This is what happens when you try to force enemies to lovers. You can't just have characters hate each other without any founding for why. It's trying to be like, oh, well, he's an untrusting, taciturn king. That's it. That does not breed in someone a violent hatred that would make you want to stab him. This is a problem with deciding what tropes are going to be in your book before you write the book, because then when you get there, you're shoehorning these tropes in where they don't work. They don't make any sense. So she's finally like, at least tell me what we're looking for, and he's like, fine, if you don't tell Grimm. So he says, I'm looking for Lightlark's heart, which seems like a thing he could probably, I mean, he's the ruler of Lightlark, so could he not look for that, like, all year? Also, calling it now, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I'm gonna say that Lightlark's heart turns out to be a person, probably Isla. I have no idea if this is true. I don't remember this from the spoilery reviews that I've watched. Again, I often forget what I have heard from spoilery reviews, but like that is my first immediate instinct. Heart of Lightlark, probably a person, not an object, probably Isla. We'll see if I'm right. And she's like, aren't you the heart of Lightlark? And he's like, no, I only channel the power. If I die, the power can no longer be channeled, and that's why everybody here dies. Apparently the heart blooms, so it can, presumably it can fade or die and then be reborn. And you know what, Isla was somewhat recently born, at least by the standards of these, like, 500-year-old beings. Maybe I'm stretching way too much. Maybe it is just another MacGuffin object, but I feel like it's gonna be Isla. So Oro could dry her off with his magic, but he doesn't, and she's like, yes, good, don't use your magic on me. And I'm like, why? You could be dry right now. So inside the cave that they landed in, there's like a weird garden situation, very like heart-shaped herb from Black Panther kind of vibes here. So the king believes that the heart is hiding in one of these plants, and he brought her along to be like, which plant would a magical MacGuffin hide inside of? And Isla mentions that the heart leeches off of a life form. I don't know where she got that idea, but she thinks that it does. And my brain is immediately like, aha, it's in Isla, or it is Isla, and the reason she doesn't have any powers right now is because it's leeching them away. He disliked her as much as she disliked him, and she was fine with that. Why would you dislike each other? You have no reason. If you wanted to go enemies to lovers, the person that she should be down here with is Cleo, not Oro. Cleo could be like, hey, I don't like you, you're a little spoiled brat, you think you know everything, and also you broke into my castle. Cleo, you could come up with reasons why she and Isla would dislike each other. They're still thin, but at least they exist. You didn't do the work Alex asked her, so you do not get the credit. Okay. I am mad. How dare you, Alex? So they leave the cave because he's like had her identify some plans and then rather start searching together. He was like, we're done here, because Alex doesn't know how to end a scene. They just stop. But the king is like, the only way out is if I fly you out. And so he flies him and Isla up back through the hole. And when she opens her eyes, they're walking on air in an exact copy of the Howl's Moving Castle, walking in the sky scene. And Alex asked her, how dare you?
And start walking.
No, absolutely not. You do not get to use that scene. You come back when you have learned how to write a complex story, and you may use that scene. But this nonsense, Alex, absolutely not. I will not tolerate it. I am so upset. I'm like unreasonably upset. Also, Oro laughs meanly because we are 5. He doesn't laugh menacingly, he doesn't laugh threateningly, he doesn't laugh sarcastically, he doesn't meanly. Alright, I literally waited until the washing machine was done because it got so loud, but that's it for the chapter. He takes her on a walk in the sky, she's pissed about it, and then he leaves her on the beach so she can walk home, and he flies off, and that's the end. Again, everything feels very abrupt, very short. I thought that this book was not going to be as bad. A lot of people were saying, yeah, it's bad, but it's pretty standard YA fare. Listen, I've read a lot of YA books, and yeah, some of them can be pretty bad, but like this is not standard. This is below standard. This is below what we deserve as readers, not even adult readers reading young adult books. This is not good as a young adult book either. It's not that high of a bar to cross. The bar is in hell. A book that makes sense, that's all I'm asking for. Alright, I need to go walk the dog, and then I'll probably come back and read another chapter, even though I don't want to. I thought maybe my rage had subsided, but it has only grown. So I hope this is entertaining for all of you. It's actually not shocking that the publishing industry went for it, but this book is a really good cautionary tale for why you shouldn't base your book on tropes and tropes alone, because it can do this to your book. this is what could happen. So please, as much as it's fun to play with the trend right now of marketing your book on tropes, write the book first, figure out what tropes are in it, and market it that way instead of deciding what tropes are going to be in your book and then forcing them in there when they don't make any sense, all right? That's my piece of advice for you. But now I gotta go walk the dog. I'll be back. And we're back. The dog and I had a lovely walk. Thank you for asking. Do not destroy my chair, Jojo. Do not do it. I'm gonna try to get through this chapter before my memory card runs out. This chapter is called Seeking because this author is not very creative with her chapter titles. So Isla immediately goes and tells Celeste about the heart situation. So Celeste says, "Are you sure he said heart?" And I'm confused, like, what else would he have said that sounds like heart? What else would he be looking for? I guess my curiosity is slightly piqued, like, what did Celeste think that he would have been looking for? I would love it so much if the original offense that has to be repeated was something just like snubbing somebody at a party. This whole thing was caused because somebody snubbed a witch or something like that. Somebody has to be rude to someone else under the right circumstances. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Isla's like, this is good actually because I can use them to get into the library. And then Celeste is like, are you sure you can convince him? And it says, Isla winced. The king hated her. Still, she would find a way. He doesn't hate you. And I don't know why you hate him. So confusing. In a few weeks, though, they're going to be allowed to kill each other, which again, why? What is the point? Nobody ever seems to succeed in killing each other because the curse hasn't been broken. Rather than doing all of these stupid competitions and dumb, like, demonstrations, you could all be working together to figure out how to solve the curse. I just do not understand. Just get together as a team and go all, like, murder mystery escape room and figure it out. Instead of all this, like, backstabby, double-crossy, ooh, who's my ally, who's my enemy? We have to do these weird demonstrations of our powers and then team up into teams of 2 for just like, no. None of it makes any sense. If the underlying raw plot of your book does not work with all of the stuff that you have laid over it, you need to change something. You need to either go back to the very drawing board and change the fundamental conceit of your book, or change everything else that is on top of it. Because, like, your plot doesn't make sense, Alex. Now, sometimes, especially if you're young, which she is, if you've just written a book, you're really excited about it, it can be hard to see the flaws. To you, it makes sense, because you know all of the details that you haven't actually put into the book. To you, it's confusing why anyone else wouldn't understand it, which is why it's so important to have beta readers, critique partners, editors who are going to be harsh, who are going to be honest, who are going to tell you, look, this doesn't make any sense as it is now. Here are some ways you might consider that could help it make sense. I seriously doubt she had beta readers because this thing was rushed to publication so quickly, she probably barely had editors. I shudder to think of what this book looked like before whatever editors she had go over it. But I feel like it was in such a hurry to just get out there and be published because people were chomping at the bit to have it, that it never went through the developmental editing process that it desperately needed. So that scene just ends, her and Celeste's scene just ends, and then we cut to her and Oro going to a new location on Sky Isle. So this time he does take her to the woods, and she's like, are these woods like the woods back home? The woods back home are really dangerous. And I'm like, again, were you not there for the conversation where he warned you that the woods were gonna be dangerous? So I guess he wasn't concerned that the heart would be inside the garden, which you'd think to me that would be the first place to look. He's like, no, you pointed out some plants in the garden, and then I went and researched where those plants grow on the islands. So that's where the heart would be, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me, because if it's the heart of Lightlark, why would it be on one of the islands, like out, away from Lightlark?
Oh, what are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
So they get to this giant valley full of these plants called purse plants, And she's like, that's like way too many flowers for us to search. Will we know when we found it? And he's like, yes, it radiates power, but only if you get really close to it, which is real fucking convenient. But also, still, could be Isla, because like maybe her powers are disguised so that no one will know that she's the heart of Tafiti or whatever. She's going to check all of the plants, and I thought all they would be doing was just sort of walking around in like a pattern to see if they sensed it. Sense the heart anywhere, because he said it would radiate power. But she is individually checking all of these flowers. It's like if you pet the top of them, they open up. And so she's checking flower by flower. Also, she's using her shirt. She's ripping up her shirt to mark where she's already been, which kind of makes sense. I think you'd kind of be able to tell like how far you've gotten, especially like these are plants. You could stamp them down to mark where you have been. Instead, she's going to use her fucking shirt, so by the time he comes to collect her, oh, her shirt's mostly just in tatters now.
So you managed to get your shirt off.
But they didn't find the flower today, and the king is, like, just horrified that she had to rip up her shirt, probably because he's seen her belly button now, and that gives him tingly feelings. But then they just go home, cutting the scene short as usual. The next morning, her servant comes with more pants and shirts, just like the ones that she tore up. So then they go back to check more flowers, and I'm like, why didn't we just combine these scenes? Because she's going to talk with him a little bit this time. So all we needed from that previous scene was the fact that she ripped up her shirt and he got her more shirts. I'm sure that's an integral part of the relationship they're trying to build here. Then she acts like an annoying little sister, and she like flicks his crown because she knows he hates it. What is happening? She's suddenly gone into full sass mode. Like, her personality has altered for this moment, so we can have like this flirty moment where all of a sudden she's very in his face and flicking his crown and being very saucy. You should tell me all your secrets, or all, you know, blah blah blah. And I'm like, what? Where did this come from? What is this? Yesterday, the thought of being this close to him, you would have been like, ugh, ew, oh no, I hate him. And now today, you're fluttering your eyelashes. She literally does that. Then he flicks her crown. And is this flirting? I may be ace, but I don't think this is what flirting looks like. Once again, I am forced to ask, allosexuals, are you okay? And he's so powerful that he like dents her crown when he flicks it, and she goes back to being like furious with him. And she says that if they weren't partners, she would gut him. So great, glad, love that. So of course, because we have so much book left, they do not find the heart in the flowers. But they have come closer as people. No, they haven't. This only exists because stories often have characters fail at things before they succeed. As far as relationship building goes, we got a very out of character moment with her, like, sassing him to his face. And then he got her a bunch of new sweaters. I need to go empty my memory card. Maybe I'll read another chapter. We'll see. All right. Is it the same day, or am I just wearing the same sweater? It's the same day. That's the last time I filmed, but I was looking at my thumbnails. Like, sometimes I use what I'm wearing to tell when I finish a chapter, so when I'm planning out how many chapters I'm going to include in each video, I'm like, okay, well, I've got 3 with that sweater, so that takes about this much time. And I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm wearing this sweater in, like, so many. Alright, chapter 25 is called Second Place. So for some reason all the lights are shut off in the castle, and I'm like, why? We were told over and over again that it's always light in the castle, there's always fires going, but now all the lights are off. Maybe she's dreaming. Then Grimm shows up, and maybe she's just dreaming about him, because we don't want to forget Grimm. He lifted her from the ground by the backs of her thighs. Did you just grab a hunk of her thighs? That sounds painful and uncomfortable. But okay, it's a sexy dream, because they start a smoochin'. And then she wakes up and she's like mad that she is having a sexy dream with Grimm. She's sad because she hasn't seen him in a while. He used to follow her around and invade her space way more often, and she misses it. Oh no, be careful. She's like, I need some fresh air after that sexy dream, and she goes out on her balcony, and I'm like, bitch, don't fall off again. So she decides to make herself a sleeping potion so she can stop having horny dreams about Grimm, and she goes down to find the kitchen. She hears people talking from around a corner, and one of the people talking is Oro, and the other person is Azul. This author feels the need to explain what tiptoeing is. Azul wants to do something, she doesn't hear what it is conveniently, that will get him sentenced to death, and then Azul says a realm has to die, Oro. If he has to die, if he sacrifices himself to save everybody else, I am definitely giving this the person of color or minority does everything for the white straight main character, because he's the only gay guy here and he's the only black guy here, and if he sacrifices himself for all of these people, now technically the main character's not white, but she's barely described. Everybody else is white, very pale as far as we know, but she makes a little noise and then they shut a door and she doesn't hear any more of the conversation. So just like the barest, teeny tiniest snippet of a conversation. And then we just cut to her and Oro going on another one of their searches. Once again, we're reminded how teeny tiny and short Isla is. Now, I like to write a short character. I like a good shorty. But, like, all of these female leads are so teeny tiny. It's driving me insane. It's like, you know women have other body types, right? And I say that as a short, skinny woman, there are other body types. You have appealed to my demographic enough. Please stop. She immediately admits that she was eavesdropping, and she's like, what is this I hear about you aligning yourself with Azul? Oh, of course. Azul lost someone he loved, so we have the stereotypical gay guy gets his lover killed. Yep, his husband. How did I know? This book is made entirely out of tropes, you see, and so even the ones that weren't advertised, pretty straightforward. So she immediately starts asking questions like, oh, was his husband from the same realm? And Oro's like, no. And she's like, how does that work? Are more people marrying outside their realm? And he's like, yeah, which seems weird because the realms seem very isolated, standoffish, and like they don't interact with each other. So it's weird that inter-realm marriage is on the rise. But then she's like, what about children? How many powers do they get? And he says they only get one, which I suspect is not true. She knows that they're going to be going past Wild Isle. Sounds like a Disney attraction. And she's like, ooh, I want to see it because all the wildlings left Lightlark. So the Isle has nobody on it. And she's like, that's where all the plants would be, right? And he's like, no, all the wildlife there is dead. And she's devastated for the space of a sentence, and then she's over it. She's moved on. So they get to a clearing where there's more plants, and she's asking him, like, what do you think about wildlings? And he's like, back when I was a child, they were like advisors to the court, and some of my favorite people were wildlings. Some of my best friends were wildlings. But now they're evil and bad. Once again, we're reminded of the very contrived reason that Isla is getting away without using her powers. As they're cutting open trees to find the heart, Oro was like, man, this would be easier if you had your powers. Gosh darn, too bad we have to keep them hidden. Shucks. That's it for that chapter. Another just riveting chapter. The next chapter is called Thorns, but I think I've had about as much of this book as I can handle today. So even though Nigel is being very snuggly right now, I am going to go do other things. But I will see you for the next chapter. Hi, hello, it's another dreary day and we're back for more chapters of Lightlark. I took the weekend off of reading this book. My books are not in the background. They are sitting because they're starting to get a little bit bent out of shape from standing on end, so I am pressing them with another book. So there's just a random blank space. Hang on, what should I fill it with? I feel like I need something. There's an asexual octopus there now, so balance has been restored. All right, we are, I think, about halfway through, just like looking at it. We're getting there. I don't know what other nonsense this author is going to pull out of her ass to just throw at this book, because at this point, I feel like we are a dartboard and she is throwing not just darts at us, but like pretzels, toothpicks, things she found on the floor, or maybe down in between the couch cushions, you know, coins. She's just, it's whatever. We are almost reaching Cyborg Tinkerer levels of just bullshit. Actually, we may have reached that, but for whatever reason, the Cyborg Tinkerer was a little bit more entertaining to read. I don't know, maybe it's just the difference in their styles, because while Cyborg Tinkerer, I think, could be argued was slightly less skillful as far as just the craft went, the type of bonkers was more entertaining. Does that make sense? This is just deeply, deeply frustrating. It makes me angry. Cyborg Tinkerer definitely made me angry in places, but most of the time I was just like laughing like, okay, sure. This book is infuriating me. You know that scene you were enjoying? It's over. You know that magical thing that you thought you understood? You don't. I hate it. I hate it. All right, let's go. Chapter 26, Thorns. Let's get some Thorns in here. The chapter titles also remind me a little bit of Jenna Moreci because they're like one-word chapter titles and it's just like a thing that's in the chapter. Yes, my hair is doing that thing where half of it lays down and the other half sticks up. Thank you for noticing. I do not have an uneven head. I just have very uncooperative hair. She's still upset that Grimm has not come to visit her. The creepy guy who could be invisible and watching you dress. You're mad he's not around. If Oro took her and bought her chocolate, I bet she'd like him too. One thing I thought, because I knew in the middle of this book, the main character was going to spend a lot of time with Oro. And I thought in the descriptions that I heard that they would be going out on an adventure together. They would have to be out in the wilderness, in the wild, for several days, sleeping by campfires, etc. But no, they're just going out every night and coming back every day, and that's it. Like, she has a nice warm bed to sleep on. She doesn't have to deal with Oro except for when they're actively doing their, like, plant searching. And that's disappointing because I was like, well, hey, at least maybe we'll get a couple of characters to, like, bond. But they're barely forced to be together, and when they're searching for plants, they're usually kind of on opposite ends of the forest or field or whatever they're searching anyway. I really wish that it was like they have to go away from the others and be away from the others together for a while. I think that would have led to better bonding than her being able to go back to her room, sit in her room feeling bad about, oh, why isn't Grimm visiting me? Whatever the fuck is happening, nothing else is happening. She's not having to go back to the castle because things are happening. She's having to go back because, I don't know, it would be too complicated to figure out a way for Oro to be out when the sun is shining, when, like, tents exist. He could get this really cool magical tent that blocks out all the sunlight and then he just has to crawl in it during the day, you know, like, options. This author, and a lot of young authors make this mistake, and it's something that I, when I was very young and when I was starting out, also struggled with, is you as the writer believe that you have crafted these cool, meaningful, emotional relationships, but you've only done that in your head. And you haven't gotten it on the page. And that just comes with practice. And as somebody who loves to write characters and character relationships, I didn't start out being good at that either. I needed to practice it. Going back and reading like my work when I was a teenager and like the way that I thought I had built up the relationship, when in reality I had mostly built it up in my head and hadn't managed to get it onto the page. I think that's where this author is at too. Don't mind any noises in the background, that's Adam. Isla certainly thinks a great deal of herself, so she's trying to find information about Cleo, and she's like convinced that Cleo is going to try to kill her the moment that it's allowed, and Oro's like, she's not going to kill you just because she doesn't like you. But Isla's like, no, you don't understand, I'm the main character, she's supposed to turn into an unhinged bully. Isla is trying to make unhinged bully happen for us. Oh no, she's a bisexual, Cleo's a bisexual. You gotta watch out for those bisexuals, you know. Evil. Is this the Star Trek mirror universe where everyone's bisexual and evil? But also, Cleo used to have relationships before she came into power, and now her focus is like just on her people and doing her best for them, which Isla like scoffs at because Isla is a terrible person. But it does track with her character. Isla is kind of a selfish character, and I think that's actually intentional. Isla wants to free herself. She's been imprisoned all of her life, so she really doesn't care about her people, and she really doesn't care about anybody else except herself and what makes her happy, and her goals align with that. She's trying to find an item that's going to free her and her best friend. She doesn't care about anyone else, and so it makes sense for her character to be like, why would Cleo spend all of her time like not having hobbies or lovers and worrying about her people? Because Isla doesn't have that same mindset. And I hope it's intentional on the author's part. Like, it feels like it, but who knows? It feels like she's definitely intentionally crafting a selfish character. Maybe we're supposed to be completely sympathetic to Isla, wanting to say screw you to everybody else and go get her freedom and her enjoyment. So Oro gives an explanation of why no one has like died and no one has been killed. And I cannot help but feel that all of this could be solved if they just worked together instead of this weird pair off into groups of 2, and then when you're done, we'll try to kill each other. Like, I'll read it to you, and then I'm certain we will all agree that this could all be solved much more easily if they stopped all of this dumb competition stuff and worked on solving the actual like riddle, the actual prophecy together. All of the realms are connected. You cannot begin to understand the consequences of losing one of them, even if we did know for certain the offense that needed to be committed again. The decision of who needs to die would be nearly impossible. That, more than anything, is why the curses haven't been broken until now. So, would it not make way more sense, rather than having all these stupid competitions and sitting around in your rooms for days and days and days because there's nothing to do because you have to be here for 100 days, have daily meetings, councils, brainstorming sessions, go out on these adventures all together. Try and solve this instead of just having these weird, arbitrary competitions for no reason other than the plot of this book. The author decided that that's what the plot of this book was going to be. I would bank good money that this book was plotted because it feels like it has run afoul of one of the dangers that can happen, does not always happen, can happen to plotters, where they decide what their book is going to be, and when the book doesn't fit that, they just force it. And it results in books like this. Isla didn't know why she spoke her next words, but she needed clarity, answers. So you tell us she doesn't know why she's asking her next question, and then a sentence later, tell us why she's asking her next question. So she's like, why don't you just kill Grimm? Because like he's like longtime enemy. He's not really part of all of this, even though he is, isn't he? Isn't he also linked like everything else? But Oro was like, I can't.
Lost a smidgen of footage here due to the way that my camera bookmarks sections. But he says that he can't kill Grimm because Grimm is protecting them from some quote-unquote greater danger, which I can only assume is going to be book 2.
The book is trying to convince us that Isla is like so weak and so outclassed, even though at every turn she is capable of like everything. Her blades should have been enough. She was a great warrior, but against power, metal might as well be paper. The problem is that she's hiding the fact that she's powerless, and because you have to have the character hiding the fact that she's powerless, the fact that she's powerless can never really come into play as a weakness of hers. So instead, you have her compensating for this quote-unquote weakness by having her be good at everything. If you wanted her to have this weakness of her feeling like, oh, I have no powers and I can't match up to everybody else, then you have to have it revealed to everyone that she has no powers, so that she is constantly facing the threat of people who have powers, instead of this whole, well, I don't have powers, but I can hide it really well and succeed at everything that people who have powers succeed at without them. Then you might as well have just given her powers. You're trying to make her seem like the underdog when you have given her no underdog moments, except one time she got really cold. We're getting to the Thorns. She wandered to the edge of the forest where they're checking the trees. They're cutting open trees to look for the heart.
and she's going into like these roses with big old thick thorns, and she doesn't know why, but she's just like drawn to keep walking. She feels the need to explain that thorns are plant defense mechanisms, like we couldn't figure that out on our own. I'm pretty sure even teenagers understand the purpose of thorns. But she comes to this like wall of thorns, and she's like, this is suspicious, like it's protecting something. Maybe the heart of Lightlark. And just when she's about to turn around and be like, hey Oro, I found a thing, the spines just like grab her. The vines come alive and grab her. Blood ran hot down her back, tears shot down her face. I don't think of tears normally as things that shoot. Ran, streaked, streamed. Shoot like makes me think that they're like squirting like out of her eyeballs like a squirt gun. This bitch is so mean for no, she's just the biggest dick for no fucking reason. So Oro comes to her and he tells her to stop moving, you're making it worse. Very straightforward, and she is pissed. She wanted to spit at his feet for chastising her at a time like this. Bitch, he's not chastising you. He's trying to save you from the fucking thorns. What is wrong with this woman? Why is she so needlessly pissed off at this guy? I know why. It's because Alex is very clumsily, possibly one of the most clumsy attempts I've ever seen of trying to have like rivals to lovers as a theme. This pain is a surprise. She is completely like breaking down and screaming and flailing and crying. Which, I mean, I get it, like if you're prepared for it, you can usually handle it better, but like she was a stoic badass about pain all the time. So you'd think like, okay, maybe at first it's really startling, it's surprising, but you'd think now that she's been like trapped by these vines for a little while, she could like start to get it under control. But apparently all the other horrible pain that she suffered so far, nothing to these vines stabbing her with their thorns. Yeah, now she's vomiting on herself. So Oro breaks all the vines free and frees her with his magic, and then she says that she wants to be the one to pull the thorns out, except for a lot of them are in your back, so I don't know how well that's gonna go. So Oro's like, why did the plant attack you? Aren't you a wildling? And she just says, I tripped. 10 out of 10 explanation. Then she calls him overbearing for trying to help her pull the thorns out and tells him to go away. Why are you so bitchy, Isla? Fucking hell, figure out a way to use these thorns to your advantage. Seriously, like just bring one home and stab your enemy with it. Apparently it'll be the worst thing they've ever experienced in their life. Oro went to go check on the vines and he busted them open, and apparently there's nothing behind there, so just a wall of vines for no reason. And then he came back and she keeps being like, go away, Oro, I don't want your help. And he's like still hanging around because he's like a decent human being. Again, I can see the seams in your badly written plot where you have your main character who hates this guy for no reason whatsoever. And she's gonna have to finally soften up and let him help her. And oh, won't that be a great character arc? No, because she didn't hate him for any good reason. She's just being a jerk. So of course he points out that she has a lot of spines to pull out and they have a mission, so she's like, fine, I'll let you help me. Which I'm sure is supposed to be an emotional moment. Our hearts are supposed to swell like, oh, she's letting him in. But again, as we have discussed, the setup for this moment was not there, and you can't just have moments like this and expect that because they're a trope, because they're a beloved trope, it's going to work. You can in fan fiction, because you already have the base in the original work that's been set up for you, but not in original fiction. In original fiction, I'm afraid you have to do all the work yourself. You have to do all the work yourself, Alex, and you have not done so. I wonder if she writes a lot of fan fiction. I could see that. Feeling like she should just be able to use the tropes and that should be good enough emotionally, when she doesn't realize that, again, in original fiction, if you want to do that, you have to lay the groundwork first. This is dumb. Maybe somebody likes this, but I'm laughing. It's making me laugh. So Oro is like, you're gonna bite your tongue if you keep pulling out the thorns without anything to bite down on. So here, and he gives her something to bite down on, but her eyes are closed, so she doesn't realize what it is. And she opens her eyes when she's done pulling out the thorns, and he gave her his hand to bite down on, so now she has like chomped his hand. And I'm like, who would think of that? If I've got a friend who like needs something to bite down on, I would give him a piece of my clothing, my belt. He's a fantasy guy, he's probably got a leather belt. Your hand? My guy? Is that a trope I'm not familiar with? I forgot, like, for a second I was confused because Oro, like, starts healing her, which, you know, he probably could have gotten the thorns out using his healing magic. But it's called Moonling abilities, and I was like, wait, he's a Sunling. But then I remember that Oro has, like, access to other people's powers, so I guess Moonling was one of them. I'd forgotten that. Honestly, she could tell me at any point that Oro had any powers, and I would not remember whether we'd been previously told that, and I'd just be like, yeah, sure, that sounds right. Once she gets finished being healed, she's like, okay, we've searched all the trees, what now? And he's like, okay, I was looking in the biggest groves and fields that I knew of, but these plants grow all over the island, so searching all of them, not feasible. And she's like, great. And he's like, but I mentioned magical creatures before, so we're gonna have to go visit some of them, which of course is gonna put them in a whole heaps of danger, some more danger, maybe some more action. You guys know I love magical creatures. I always include interesting magical creatures in my stories, so I will definitely be on the lookout for how I feel good old Alex Astor does with magical creatures.
Get used to disappointment.
All right, well, I hope we have learned some very important lessons today about setting the groundwork for emotional moments in your book. But I'll catch you for the next chapter when I have more free time. Hi, hello, it's Lightlark o'clock. Are you excited? I'm excited. So I'm trying to make these videos longer, which I'm sure you've noticed by now, and I realized that I am a verbose motherfucker, so I need to like chill. But I have written down notes. Things I noticed as I was editing that I want to talk about real quick. First of all, we are probably over halfway through, well, we're about halfway through the book. And she has barely used the star stick. She has a magical teleportation device. Why is she walking anywhere? She walks around all the time. When she finishes her tasks with Oro, she walks home. Maybe in the second half of the book she'll start using it again, but it feels so forgotten about, it's ridiculous. Also, why is the heart eating a thing? It never comes up again. There's the beginning where she feels uncomfortable because she's being made to eat a heart, which, again, begs the question, do her people eat hearts or don't they? They solve that by having hearts brought to her room.
I don't even know what she does with them when they get to her room. Does she throw them off the balcony into the sea? I like to imagine she has a closet that is steadily filling with hearts and is getting smellier and smellier by the day.
100% in my opinion, the only reason that exists is that so Grimm can give her the nickname Heart Eater. That's the only reason. I think the author came up with Heart Eater first and then retrofitted the book so that there would be a reason for him to do that. We also have a couple of bingo squares. The first one is all characters are stereotypes. I was trying to think of a concise way to describe the characters, and I realized that I could do it in like a sentence each. We've got the broody one, the bitchy one, the best friend one, the gay one. Did I get rid of all characters are stereotypes? I think I did. I'm gonna give it all characters have the same voice, because I got rid of all characters are stereotypes. I got rid of the wrong one. Oh look, I've already given her main character immediately good at high school activity. Well, there we go. So those are my notes. Let's get back to reading. This chapter, chapter 27, is called The Harbor. Again, she's certain that if she breaks her curse, she will get powers. Maybe it's like a retroactive thing. If she breaks the curse, then her parents will never have disobeyed the curse, and so she will get to have powers? Shrugging forever, but Oro has not been to visit her in 5 days. So again, it just keeps highlighting how many pointless days there are. These people are trying to break a curse that is ruining all of their lives. Between the demonstrations, they're doing nothing.
Is it supposed to be stupid?
It's not stupid. It's advanced.
Cleo is building a military force behind everyone's backs, and quite frankly, she's a go-getter. We're reminded that they now have 10 days to find the bond breaker, because they want to find it before killing is allowed. So Isla goes to the market because she wants to meet with Celeste, and she thinks that they need to pretend to be friends now so people are not suspicious when they're seen together. Don't know why they didn't just go with that to begin with, but as she's in the market, someone like slips her a note clandestinely and it says, "You are in danger." This reminds me of The Savior's Sister, where every time
Layla found a clue, what was supposed to be a clue. It was usually something just like, the plan is to kill Layla, you know, something we already knew, something that was blatantly obvious, but the girls would act like, we're cracking the case wide open with this clue. What a weird way to describe ice cream. Isla rushed through the crowd, pushing past shoppers holding stacks of boxes tied with ribbon, children holding cones of cream. Fetch me my cones of cream, I'm hungry. So Isla tries to follow the person who gave her the note, but instead she bumps into Celeste. In a very awkwardly worded sentence, Celeste was suddenly in her path then. How could we reword that? Possibly something with more action to it. Isla slammed into Celeste, unsuspecting, or Isla stopped short, faced with Celeste's stern gaze, or something like that. Like, let's make it more dynamic, not just Celeste was suddenly there.
Notice how my, albeit crappy, examples also bring us back into the main character's point of view instead of using what I believe is passive voice. And it takes us out of the main character's head, so we begin it with an action of the main character instead of Celeste suddenly appeared then. You say something like, Isla was in such a rush that she didn't look up in time to see Celeste and nearly bowled into her. That puts you back in the main character's head, it puts you back in their body so that the story flows well.
I don't know why it matters because Isla's just like BRB and keeps going. Fortunately, the person she's following is wearing a very distinctive cape. So it's a trap, yeah. And as she goes into a less populated part of the city to follow this person, she's caught in what she thinks are chains suddenly around her wrists, and there's a dagger at her throat. But then she looks down and the chains aren't chains. They're water that are holding her in place. They were braided from water, firm as a rogue wave, strong as the tide. Firm as a wave. So not firm at all then, because I don't think waves are firm. She recognizes them as moonling nobles. I think we might be getting dangerously close to badass heroine constant damsel. She's getting into a lot of situations here. Let's see if somebody comes to save her, just like Oro did with the vines. Alright, so this guy brings up an excellent point that is admittedly a point that I should have thought of, but there are so many drop threads in this book, I can't think of everything. I cannot think of everything for you, Alex Astor. But the guy who's holding her is like, listen, one realm's gonna die, I don't want it to be ours, so that's why we have to kill you. Don't know if that's gonna work because I don't know how the prophecy works, like, one would think a noble has to kill a noble, but honestly, I don't think anybody actually has to die for this prophecy to go through. But yeah, because there are other people everywhere from various realms. Mightn't these other people try to take things into their own hands and do away with a ruler to try and save all of their kingdoms? Especially since Isla doesn't even have any people here. Yes, she's a wildling, but like she's probably one of the easiest ones to kill because she's so young. So yeah, I'm actually on these people's side, to be honest with you, and it's an interesting point that's being brought up, but I'm doubting it will ever be brought up again. We're probably gonna have, she's probably gonna escape and be like, wow, that was bad. Isla is rescued, not by one of her boys though, by Celeste, which again, they have more chemistry than Isla with any of the boys. I'm just saying,
I'm getting by.
I don't know whether to call this filtering or passive voice. I will be the first to admit to you that I, most of the time, have no fucking idea when something is passive or active voice. It doesn't matter how many times you explain it to me, it just doesn't stick in my brain. But this sentence is just like, why is it constructed this way? Her hand managed to grip a shard of glass from the floor. She managed to grab a shard of glass. She snatched a shard of glass from the floor. She snatched a fallen shard of glass from the floor. Like, why her hand managed to grip... This author isn't the worst writer I've ever seen, but then every now and then she writes a sentence that is so amateur, I'm like, did you go to school for creative... She went to school for this. It makes me a little concerned. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and talk like I've never accidentally written in passive voice or I've never done filtering, because everybody does, but like, sometimes it's just so jarring in this book. And of course, I pointed out mostly because it's something that we can all look out for in our own writing. Her writing is just like taking a nosedive. Was she having a really bad day and just like not focused? This is something that would be better in the hands of a more skilled, detail-oriented writer. A guy grabs her and he starts to choke her out, but she stabs him in the throat with that shard of glass. He released her immediately, reaching for his own neck, trying to speak. No words left his mouth. Now, I get that this is a young adult book and you don't want to get too gory, but at the same time, you just had your main character stab a man in the throat with a shard of glass. But we get nothing. None of the blood, none of the gurgling, none of the staggering. Like, he's reaching toward his throat, and we're just left to imagine for ourselves what that must look like, when a more skilled writer would really give us this horrifying, visceral scene of this man dying with a shard of glass in his throat. But I have read many, many young adult books that would have that level of gore in them. Gore is something that's a lot more, like, prevalent in young adults, and if you're gonna have her stab a man in the throat with a shard of glass, you might as well go all the way. Once the girls have killed all of these dudes, they write a message for Cleo in blood, in these dead men's blood. The message that they leave, oh man, such a piece de resistance, the wittiest comeback, the best comeback. It just says, try harder. Don't tell her that, she'll do it. That whole scenario made me very suspicious. Like, I have a feeling that it's gonna turn out that those people being like, yeah, we're taking matters into our own hands to try to save our realm. I have a sneaky suspicion that that's going to turn out that that's not even a thing. And this interesting plot point that I wish I had thought of the people of the realms being like, our rulers aren't solving it, so we're going to solve it for them. I don't think that's going to be a real plot point. And I'm mad about it. Alright, so that's it for that chapter. I'm going to see, I have some painting to do tonight. I'm going to see if my paintbrushes are dry. And if they're not yet, we'll do another chapter. But either way for you, the next chapter is coming. My paintbrushes are not dry yet. So, let's continue. This is chapter 28, Place of Mirrors. Place of Mirrors. Not Palace of Mirrors, Hall of Mirrors, Room of Mirrors. Our main character has very violent thoughts, but then we don't actually get to see any of the violence. Because she bought a dagger in town, and now she's like, doing that whole thing where she's like slicing away at the air, like, I'm a cool kid. Trying to have a bloodthirsty main character with no blood. How does the police force work in this world? Is there one? Who's going to be investigating the death of those nobles? If it turns out that it's one of the competitors, does it even matter? Does anyone care? Are they just allowed to kill with impunity? I'm sure none of this is going to be resolved, but like there's a whole bunch of new questions that we have opened up with her killing of these guys. So Grimm comes in and they have a moment, and it says her stomach stumbled for a moment at the sight of him. Her stomach stumbled. I've heard like her heart stuttered or something to do with her heart. You could even maybe say her heart stumbled, but like her stomach. I'm all for trying to find new words that are not the cliched same old that we use over and over again, but at the same time we use the same things over and over again because they've come to make sense to us. And whenever you try to use something new, we think about why it doesn't make sense. What does this mean? I feel like Alex got to the middle of this book and had a stroke. Her breath hitched, period. He felt her everything. He felt her What does that mean? Is he groping her? Is she trying to say that he understands her? I don't know what that means. Also, he's totally doing an Edward Cullen. She's like, why did you stay away from me? And he's like, you should stay away from me. I'm dangerous. I'm no good for you, Bella. Now we're having a completely unearned romantic moment where like they keep stepping closer to each other as they have this really cliched, heated conversation about how she should avoid him and how they're both seen as monsters, and I'm a monster. I'm a monster too. Like this came the fuck out of nowhere. The main character thinks to ask a good question, good for her, but of course we only get dismissive vagaries as an answer. Oro said that you are the only thing standing between us and a greater danger. What was he talking about? Great question. Love that. Love that she has a presence of mind in this romantic moment, to think of that and ask the question. Of course, though, he says, I could tell you, but it would only distract you. Believe me, right now, the curses are the more pressing danger. Since he won't answer that question, rather than like kicking him out or something, she's like, fine, not gonna answer that question. Show me where my people used to live when they lived here. I have no idea why she wants that. And we just cut straight to them going into the forest. No preamble needed. Why didn't she teleport there? She's already been there. She probably doesn't want to reveal that she's got the star stick, but at the same time, she could just go check this place out by herself. They get there basically immediately, and her people's island is just completely dead because there are no wildlings there to give it its magic. So it's just old dead trees, rocks, nothing. But in the middle of it, for some reason, there is the place of mirrors. Sure, once again, I am bound to use my catchphrase for this book. Sure, why not? Place of Mirrors turns out to just be the entrance to a castle. So at first it's like glass, and then pretty soon it gives way to a castle. Is that all the Place of Mirrors is going to be? The name of this chapter is for an entryway? Yeah, she's just walking around inside this castle now that's like a dead wildling castle with like fallen leaves and like... I'm picturing it very cool in my head because I'm a very visual reader. The author is not giving me very much. So I'm left to my own devices to picture really what this castle looks like, and I'm making it cool, but I just wanted to point out that the author has given us very little.
I love her lack of energy. Go girl, give us nothing.
Also, why not let her and Grimm have a conversation at some point during this walk? They have apparently been silent the entire time. We're supposed to ship them, but none of these characters ever talk to each other in a natural way. They either make really unrealistic like banter because it's supposed to be quippy, or they just talk about plot points. There's never any natural feeling conversation and dialogue between any of these characters, and this would be a perfect place for it. They've got a long walk ahead of them, there's a lot of palace to explore, but we get nothing. She's been walking around this palace for possibly hours, and this is the first time they've talked to each other. And then the scene is just over, as usual. Why isn't she teleporting? Why isn't she teleporting?
I think that all of us are learning a very important lesson here from both Lightlark and from the Savior series, that if you give your character a way to freely teleport with very little or no cost to themselves whatsoever, it's really difficult to write that into the story because it's way too convenient. So if you want to have your character have any kind of struggles, the fact that they can teleport out of any danger, you have to keep coming up with reasons why they can't do it, or alternately, in the case of both of these writers, just kind of ignoring it at times when the character totally would use it. My advice to you, and to myself, is to just not have characters that are able to teleport. Like, unless you're ready and willing to have explanations, and ones that make sense in the world for why they aren't using that teleportation all the time, then just don't do it.
She's going back to the Palace of Mirrors, so when that scene just abruptly ended, we were meant to understand that she went home, Grimm left, and then she's coming back, which was not very clear in my opinion. But she's back, she's found the Place of Mirrors again, which again is just an entryway.
And Editing Julian is back again. Let's talk about world building through architecture. Yeah, that's right, I'm going there. So she's gone to this castle that belonged to her people. This would be a great way to find clues about her people, who her people used to be before the curses, to understand them by the kind of buildings that they built, the kind of furnishings that they left, the kind of structures that they favored. She's got this whole entryway that's glass or mirrors. It's a little unclear, and that could mean maybe it's more of a greenhouse. Maybe she was meant to walk through a greenhouse into the castle. Or maybe her people are so beautiful that they're vain, and they had a hall of mirrors going into their castle so they could look at themselves. But the author gives us nothing. The main character doesn't even speculate. It's like the author was like, here's a cool visual idea, I will give it absolutely no further thought. But remember, when we are world building, a huge tool is the kind of spaces that characters are in, be it their bedroom or a whole castle. That can tell us a lot about a character or a people. So don't neglect it as a tool. Isla remembers something from a scene that we did not get to witness. She goes back to the palace, like back of the palace, where she remembers seeing a swirl symbol that she recognizes as a door because there was a trap door in her closet back home where she found the star stick and it had that same pattern on it. And we were not present for that, so like it feels so meaningless to us. Isla can't get the cool door open. She realizes she needs some kind of key, but it doesn't seem to be immediately right there. Keys usually aren't right next to the doors they open. She finds a bunch of random objects. She tries to use them as keys. They don't work. The door is still closed. And the chapter that was called The Place of Mirrors, the Place of Mirrors turned out to essentially just be a foyer, and it was mentioned twice. Now I officially have to go get some painting done, but thanks for watching with me, everyone. I'll see you for the next chapter. Hello and welcome back. It's morning now. Yay, my hair still looks the same. Now that I'm doing longer videos with this, I have to keep reading at a decent clip because I'm gonna catch up with myself, and that would be bad. This one is called The Abbey. This chapter 29, is called The Abbey, which brings up a whole bunch of questions about their religion, which I'm sure are going to go completely unanswered, but like, I hadn't even stopped to consider their religion because I haven't had time with all of the other stupid bullshit that this book has been throwing at me with no explanation. Don't try to do religion too. No, Alex, let me stop you before you start. Call it something else. Anything except Abbey. She's decided that if anybody knows how to open the vault in her old castle, it's the bartender that she met before who knows all the secrets.
What's the word out there?
They have to trade secrets. So her secret that she tells him immediately, Moonlings tried to assassinate me. And he's like, whoa! And I'm like, you expect me to believe that this guy, who knows all the information everywhere, did not get told about this? I'm sure somebody saw her go around that corner and then come back, or not come back, she probably teleported away. But I'm sure somebody saw her go around that corner, and then when they went around the corner, there were a bunch of dead nobles, and it said try harder in their blood. I feel like this guy would know. Unfortunately, he does not seem to have the answers. He does not have the new dialogue options that she needed. He does tell her that in that castle, all other people's magic is repressed, and only wildling abilities work there. And she's like, I must have something to do with the vault. I need to get in there even more now. And then the scene just fucking stops because this author has no idea how to end a scene. And we're doing something else now. Yes, this author assumes that we are too dumb to understand things as metaphor. The sky was filled with dark clouds like a pack of wolves circling, gray fur and all. They seemed to mimic her troubled mind. Yes, thank you. None of us could figure out that dark clouds and troubled minds have been linked. And Grimm finds her because he's a fucking creeper. By the way, I am not telling you all the times that she thinks to herself, what's he up to? What does he want? Because that is an ongoing trend. She has never stopped. Every time he shows up, she thinks that. I love how her two boys like never interact. If we hadn't seen them in a room together, I might think they were the same guy, just like swapping places. Because when one guy is interacting with her, the other one is off doing fuck all, and vice versa. So right now, very conveniently, she doesn't have to deal with Oro. And when Oro's around, Grimm is just gone. I feel like this author can't write both love interests at the same time for some reason. Like, is that like too many characters for her to handle at once? Isla does seem to mostly interact with one person at a time. So I kind of wonder if maybe this author does struggle a little bit with like conversations with multiple characters in them. My main advice for that, because that's something I'm pretty good at, is to really picture the scene in your head to the point that you can hopefully picture where everyone's sitting, what they're doing, like physically, what are they doing with their hands, their feet, because people don't just stand in a circle and stare at each other and talk. What are they doing? Hi, Mr. Lan. Look, Lan. Say hi to the people. Say hi, people. It's me, Lan. Say hi, Adam. The people haven't seen you much for these read-alongs. No, don't get...
Wants to read along.
Okay, Lan, this book is real bad, though. Okay?
Maybe not that.
Here you go. Read along with Lan. Alright, Lan break. But what I was saying is, picture as best you can the scene and everybody in it. Have a solid idea of their voices in your head so that you can hear
the natural flow of their conversation. And if you're struggling with that, I recommend either listening to real conversations if you can, or even listening to conversations with multiple characters in a movie or a TV show. Make sure you can hear it very clearly in your head, and it will, at least for me, flow naturally about when characters should speak, what they should say, what is in character for one character to say that another character wouldn't say, all of that good stuff. Also, fun fact, you can go back and re-edit those scenes, and if you, oopsie, gave the wrong line to the wrong character, like Fred wouldn't say that, but Bob would, you can just swap them. More bird imagery or egg imagery. The sky cracked open like an egg. I don't know if I like that or hate that, because it's not like the worst I've ever heard, but also it is kind of, it feels a little bit forced. Okay, so they get caught in the rain, yet another romantic trope, and they go to the Abbey she had seen many times before. Heavy quotes. I don't remember seeing this, but like the implications of this and their religion, as we have established, makes me very nervous. So all of their clothing is clinging suggestively to their attractive hot bods. I forget that she's always wearing a crown, but her crown got tangled in her hair and Grimm is sexily removing it. The Abbey has stained glass, but why? Like, because stained glass is common in churches in the real world, this author has put absolutely no thought or imagination into this idea of this abbey. I think she means a church, not an abbey, in fact, because what she's describing just sounds like a church. I think because she just thought that this would be a cute spot for a romantic moment, and she didn't think of any of the world-building implications, which, yes, this is young adult, but, like, stop it. Young adults deserve worlds that are built. Young adults deserve books that make sense. If you can't figure out a religion in your world, then don't include religious iconography. Hey, Landman, where's your sister? Even though these two have barely any chemistry, the author thinks they do, but they don't. They're getting more and more like, ooh, he's so attractive, and ooh, is this what love feels like? She decides the thing to ask, the very thing, is where were you the night that the curses were cast? This girl, she's only asked one, like, intelligent question this entire time, and she was just given a vague answer, so we're back to bullshit. But Grimm is like, on the day the curses were cast, I was having sex. Are you happy now? Because everything in this scene is clearly supposed to be leading up to something romantic or hot. The author is writing it in a way that shows that she knows what elements are usually involved in this type of scene, but not how to use them well. So she's like on the right track in her learning curve. But the key, as you become a better writer, is to make these elements, these common elements, flow together in a way that is yours, your own. Instead of just putting all of the pieces one after another on the page, it takes skill and it takes practice and it takes time, and I just don't think this author is there yet.
It's kind of like she's a novice baker, and she has seen finished soufflés, and she likes them, and she enjoys them, and she has all the ingredients in her kitchen for a soufflé, but she has no idea how to combine them to create the desired result, so she's just kind of slopping them all together into a bowl and hoping for the best, and clearly the soufflé is ruined.
The hottest thing that she can think of is for Grimm to show her his cool darkness powers. So they go back outside into the rain, and he like casts a wall of blackness that kills everything that it touches, which, is anybody going to wonder about that? I don't know where they are in relation to the town, but he like leaves a swath of dead plants and trees and foliage. And I'm just kind of hoping there was no like people in that. Like, how far did it go? Was he sure there was nobody who was going to get caught in his death ray?
He becomes an agent of hyper-death, which is much worse than just garden variety plain death. Well, in any case.
But she is like turned on by this, so she's like, show me more. One of the pieces that this author wants to use is Isla feeling afraid yet turned on, but she doesn't have the skill for it. I don't really know how else to explain it aside from that it's just sort of clunky and you can see the seams. So he's like, by way of sexy talk, he whispers in her ear that he could create a black hole that would destroy everything around them, and then he would just kidnap her and take her back to his lands. I don't know, allosexuals, tell me if this does anything for you. I'm sure this line was supposed to be like one that everybody was quoting on their Tumblr or something. She says, "What about staying away from me?
His lips were right above hers now, his words practically pressed against the corner of her mouth. I gave it an honest effort, he said, but it turns out I'm not that honest. I feel certain that she wrote that line being like, yes, everyone's going to be quoting this. This is it. Maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't checked. But then he decides that they should just go back because, like, I don't know, she's too afraid or something. But yeah, that chapter was called The Abbey, and the only reason it was called The Abbey is because they went into what is clearly just a church for like a few minutes for some random caught in the rain romantic tension. If we were with a more skilled author, I would think that perhaps Isla had tricked Grimm into showing her the extent of his powers by pretending she found it sexy, so that later she would know what all powers he has at his disposal. But I don't think Alex has even thought of that. I legitimately don't. I think she just thought it was sexy. He's the dark boy, so he should do death things, and she's going to be turned on by it. I could have called that chapter The Rainstorm, or Darkness, because, he can cast darkness. Adam is doing stuff upstairs. Don't mind the noises. I'm going to stop and catch some ferrets. But we do talk about patrons. Patrons like Jojo Bookish, Lauren, Robin, Ursula, Caitlin, Jessica, KJ, LaFone, Amanda, Unicorn Jenny, Celia, Neon, Taya, Alyssa, Rita, Deborah, Afra, Melissa, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Light Julie, Belle, Patrick, Anne-Sophie, Callison, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Rennie, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, and Sarah. Wow, I'm feeling super blessed right now, you guys, to have so many amazing patrons. Jealous? You should be.
But with this, the pen-like triggering device, it becomes a weapon capable of more than death. It becomes an agent of hyper-death, which is much worse than just garden variety plain death. Well, in any case...